Yo, guys, what's going on? Coach Jamie here, and I am so excited to have you here listening to my podcast, Make Time for Your Mind with Coach Jamie, where we will be talking about all things mindset, vulnerability, personal development, ways we can become better individuals. And sometimes in that process, we'll get heavy, sometimes we'll have fun, and sometimes I will be challenging your perspective. The goal, no matter what, though, is to leave you better than you were before you tuned in. So, with that being said, let's dive in. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so because Dr. Megan Nguyen is so flippin' amazing, we've done a couple of episodes together. So I'm going to let her just kind of briefly introduce herself again. But then we are going to dive into yet another just fun topic to be able to just help you grow, consider some things, but then also hopefully make you a little bit uncomfortable.
Ooh.
So
We go there, folks. We go there.
yes.
Thank you for having me again, Coach Jamie. So I'm with Golden Sheep Life Coaching. What I essentially do is help people go from point A to B while building up clarity and strategy for going to B to Z on their own. Because if I'm doing my job right, they won't need me for much longer.
Yes, so good.
So life is rough, and sometimes you need a little bit of guidance, and not just any guidance, right? Because anyone can give you advice. You know, your grandparents are great for that, but some. But I think just like people who have seen things, have done this, and have found systems and frameworks that work. And I think in episodes like this, it's great because we have two brains
Yes.
coming from different paths, but also intertwining in different ways, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
To change the world one podcast episode at a time. So
Yes.
we're going to go ahead and dig in.
Yep. Let's get into it. Today, we're talking about ambition, and specifically the tempo to which we pace ourselves, or we don't pace ourselves enough of in this race for being the best in this lifetime.
Yes.
What does that even mean, right? Like the best for you, the best for your mom, the best for whoever you're trying to please. And we picked this topic because, especially with what Coach Jamie does, she works with a lot of people with this profile, but also being a grad student very recently as well, this is very relevant. And this was a topic that I would have fought someone to not talk about because, I don't know, do you ever go on such a defense that you become offensive? That's definitely where I was at with this topic. And so let's see what it brings up for me in my past and even current present. But also in the world of entrepreneurship, I think the topic of ambition is very real in many different directions. So kick us off, Jamie. What do you think?
This is super loaded of a topic. And so that's why I'm really excited to just kind of see where it goes. I know when you and I were brainstorming offline, there was a couple of different perspectives we had on it. And so that's why this one I'm really stoked to do is because it's not going to be of us necessarily agreeing and just seeing it from different avenues. But I think that the reason why it's also so loaded is because ambition isn't a bad thing, right? But again, we live in a digital world where it's constantly being thrown in your face that you have to do this. You need to be experiencing this. This is how you should be living your life. But then it's almost like analysis paralysis because there's so many different people who are doing it and how they're doing it. And then you still have what it is that you think, what it is that you want. And then shaming yourself if you didn't get it because you're not where you thought you were going to be. Like I feel like it's like you're literally a hamster on a wheel, just sprinting in place, getting nowhere fast, which that used to be how I lived. I used to joke and I would call myself the Jan of all trades, you know, I'm like, or what was it? Yeah. Jan of all trades, but like I was the master in none. And it was because of just constantly trying to chase and had an expectation for every little thing that I did that I was judging the race while I was running it, which can be a good thing, but you don't have the proper viewpoint to properly judge it if you're running it. Does that make sense? So, yeah, well, I'll let you go from there.
What do you think about the word ambition?
Again, I think it's it's a great word, right? Because that's not one that I feel is so overly used just yet compared to other ones. Like, because right now it's like the phrases live your best life and be happy and manifest and balance and gratitude, right? Like where it's like this just overused. Ambition, I think, still just got some like grit to it, right? Like it's intense, it's exciting, it's motivating, it fuels you to want to drive for more.
Right.
But again, I think there is a time and place for it. I mentioned this. I mean, I say this like 60 times a week. We need water to survive, but water can also kill us. And I think that that's also the problem, is that people have an expectation around the ambition within them. And then it's the expectation that they set for themselves within their ambition that destroys them. What about you? What are your thoughts on ambition?
I think it's a heavy word. I think it's very heavy, and I think we put it on a pedestal, which again, the water, you need water, plants, right? And it keeps you alive and it keeps you moving forward and it keeps you on your toes. I think where the problem starts to happen is when we're not allowing ourselves to write our own definition of what ambition is to us.
Okay, keep going. Keep going.
So for me, a lot of ambition and outcome of said ambition was very culture heavy.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Very
and I think that this is also, go ahead, continue.
Yeah. And I think it's in society, social media doesn't help. We've talked about that many times. Does not help. And the algorithm is not in your favor. I know this sounds very weird to say, but if you like a picture of a cup and you watch another cup video, you don't like it, but you watch it for past 5 seconds, you are now going to get all the coffee stuff sent your way. And so your world is now that. And so if you like a few posts of ambition, all these posts are going to go your way. And so now your world is nobody who's failing at any point. They're all winners, all positive people, right? And so now this world has been morphed around you, and you're like, shit.
And then your self-esteem goes down because you're not at their level 10 and you're sitting shaming yourself for being at level 2.
Right. And so just the media that we consume doesn't help us. It reminds us you're not doing enough. And so you're just pushing against a brick wall. And so I'm not saying that we should throw away ambition. I would say I'm a very ambitious person, but I think redefining what ambition is, because what we're not associating the ambition with is the need for performance and outcome. And I think that's where ambition gets tricky, is when we're tying it with an outcome, and when that outcome doesn't happen, what does it say about our ambition level?
So I'm going to share 2 different. That's why I pulled up. I pulled up my phone for good reason, I promise. But I'm going to share 2 different sides of the coin. Okay. I love doing this. Like devil's advocate is like my favorite. Because also similar to you, I think it's important on this whole, yes, let's redefine. Okay. But that, I think, has also become a very big problem in our society, as everybody is trying to change the definition of words that were already created to mean something. And that is what contorts why people now act differently, is because they're trying to take a word and to spin it into something that it isn't.
Example?
If we redefine it, right? So, and I'll kind of use it as an example, because I'm going to essentially contradict myself. I'm going to challenge my own thought as I say this, so I'm aware of that, in case anybody wants to like come at me, the keyboard warriors of like, this girl's an idiot because she just said this and now she's saying that. I'm fully aware. But again, it's because even within my own brain, I want to play devil's advocate, and I can make an executive decision on whatever it is that I'm thinking or feeling. So one side of this is that there was a podcast I'd listened to one time, and they said something really cool. Words are imperfect ways to describe something.
Okay.
So we can't take it as 100% verbatim all the time, because there's flaws to every system. So an example, before getting to this secondary example, binging. Now all of a sudden it's this cool thing to be like, I'm going to binge on Netflix, or I binge on Starbucks because it's my favorite. But technically, the word binge became about because of a medical issue,
It's a
right?
clinical term.
Yes, exactly. For people who are excessively eating or drinking or doing something in a very, very, very unhealthy manner, that it's a sense of a medical term of diagnosing, right? And so now, because we want to redefine binging and we want to use it how we want to use it in our lives, it's now discrediting and taking the power away from what that word was intended to mean. So again, I'm going to contradict myself. That's one side of it. But now let's go to the other pendulum, is that I think that, okay, I lied. I kind of intertwined both of those. Okay.
It's a complicated topic.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So, because with this is that like, I think it's important for us to be able to identify and recognize those things in our lives, but like, let's also simplify just going to the Oxford Dictionary. As a noun, ambition is a strong desire to do or achieve something, typically requiring determination and hard work. So if we just take that verbatim, like that's all ambition is supposed to mean, the desire to want to work hard and do something.
However.
Right. But so I guess, when we define and we change the definition of ambition, what does that look like?
I think maybe not necessarily change the literal definition, but
how you feel about
because in that definition there were two subjective words. Strong. What's strong to me may not be strong to you.
Very valid point.
And determined. I could be like, this is a determined man, and you're like, no, he's not. He's doing what he needs to be doing, right? And so I think it's just so subjective. It's like, I guess like. Maybe the intensity or level of ambition is what we need to redefine, not necessarily the actual ambition itself, because ambition is ambition, right? Like a computer is a computer.
But no, see, and I love that we just did this because what's cool is now we're gaining clarity on how when other people are hearing this message, because the other phrase, I'm sorry, I'm going on a slight tangent and then I'll make my way back. I reroute a lot.
It's okay.
Is normalize. We need to normalize this. Just because something's normal doesn't mean it's good. So we need to like not normalizing everything because it's not okay. Because now it's giving people the option to just take, well, you know what? This is my definition and this is how I would do it. So I'm going to go run with it this way. No. You're missing the point. But I think that this was great context for both of us, but everybody listening is like, no, like let's sit with genuinely what it means to be ambitious. But now let me define the intensity or what that looks like in my life.
Right.
Is that fair?
Fair.
Sweet.
And in this world of buzzwords, okay? Not saying it's bad. Don't come at me. But buzzwords, we really need as coaches to be clear as far as what people mean when they use these words. Because sometimes people use words because they hear it all the time, the algorithm, right? So where are you coming from when you're saying ambition? Because sometimes they're saying I'm not lonely, but what they're experiencing is loneliness, for example, right? Yeah. Same thing with ambition. So how are we
defining it? You guys didn't listen to that podcast yet? Go check it out.
Yes. Loneliness versus alone. But ambition, right? Because again, we always tie it with outcome. So I've had moments where I'm like, I'm a very ambitious person. I'm going to do all the ambitious things. And then I don't get the outcome I wanted. And I'm like, I'm not as ambitious as I wanted to be. So if I work harder, that will make me more ambitious, which does that even make any sense? But in that moment, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm pretty sure a lot of graduate students, especially in clinical psychology, go through that. Yeah. Is that your outcome doesn't change the definition of what that is.
And I think when we were talking about this offline and where the biggest, where we thought that there would be a difference in perspective here, was when you had mentioned about reflecting on if to this point, if you've done enough, if you should be doing more, like how you should be embracing this. And are you recalling that?
Yes, I was saying that looking back, I didn't need to push the gas pedal as hard as I did, and now I'm trying to figure out my tempo now. And I didn't need to be as intense as I was in the past. And you said I disagree because sometimes life comes as it comes.
Yes.
Please tell us more about that.
Yes. I know it may sound super corny, but I will totally back this and explain why. It's one of my favorite questions to have asked, that if somebody were to like say, if you could go back and tell your younger self, or if you could give any advice to your younger self, or do you have any regrets, right? Two questions that I really like, like in your life. The answer would be no. And I honestly don't think that I would go back and tell my younger self anything other than just trust the process and keep going. And the reason being is because, don't get me wrong, like one, it can be a valuable lesson to look back and now know what not to do moving forward if you choose to go there. But more times than not, it takes you to a space of shame of how you should have done something differently. And to me, I don't think that's very fruitful because like there was something in you in that time that told you that's what you should have been doing. And now you have so much value because you can speak on what it meant to overwork yourself at that point. The amount of experience that you gained that college can never teach you, right? Even if while you were in college during that point, you were learning valuable lessons because of the pace that you found necessary at that point in your life. Or quite literally, like think about it from like just a survival mode. If I have somebody who's backing me into a dark alley, I'm not going to be like, you know, maybe I should have pumped the pedal a little bit and I should have just stopped and asked the guy like, hey, man, I love you. What are you doing this for? No, I'm just going to fight for my freaking life. You know what I mean? And so it's like, you know, the other episode when I told you how I experienced the burnout or the medical condition of a kidney infection is really what it was. It wasn't burnout. It was
she was like declining health-wise, literally.
Yeah, was on bed rest at home for an entire week. And at that point, like, it's because like I had prior to that, I was in a corner of just like living in absolute fear. And that version of Jamie wasn't wise enough that if somebody would have been like, oh, let's just stop, let's breathe and assess and life's going to be good. No, that version of Jamie would have denied it. Right? I wouldn't have been in a position that I was willing to hear any other way to do that because already I was just fighting. And now because I made it through that, I'm stronger, I'm wiser, and now I can adjust the tempo that I use moving forward until the next lesson of life hits me and I end up approaching it from the tempo that I feel fit at that time.
Right.
Does that make sense?
They always say everything has a purpose. Painful or not, everything has a purpose in your story. I just never saw it like that. Yeah, so it was interesting that, because, you know, we were thinking about all the different ideas of what to talk about and share with you all, and I had just mentioned that as like an off-topic thing, and she said, I actually disagree. Like, I disagree. And I'm like, let's talk about that. And we didn't even dive into it. I said, save it. Let's talk about it here. Because I think even as coaches, we need other coaches and different perspectives.
Without a doubt.
Right? And so, okay, so could we dive into the case?
Yes, let's go.
Okay. 32-year-old Asian American female who has always prioritized for plan A because there was no space for plan B. If I'm going to fail, there's no option for failing. This is it. And so she's a client of mine, went through all that. She was in medicine, of course, I mean, which doesn't help the setting because the setting almost fosters that type of mentality. Do or die. Very intense, right? So, you know, 1 semester away, actually 1 month away from finishing clinicals and residency, life changed and she had to pivot. And so now she's burnt out, for lack of a better term, and she started on a different journey than she had thought. She was supposed to work in a healthcare setting and now she's not. And now she's wondering, what's my new tempo? What is my new tempo? And I think she also had similar thoughts as mine, as it didn't have to be that hard. And now I'm completely battered and bruised. And what's to come, because that's life, is that the top of a new mountain that you just climbed is just the bottom of another, essentially. What's my new pace? Because I can't keep going at this pace anymore. Where do we start with this client?
You asking me to go first?
You go first.
Okay. I love when people come to me in this frame of mind. Because it opens up the perspective of, okay, this is what happened. What are we going to do about it next? So let's use this at a point to genuinely build out a new blueprint, right? Like, this didn't go as you thought it was going to. What was your identity that was wrapped into that? Because who do you think that what was going to be so spectacular about your life in that setting that it can't be in another avenue? Inky Johnson is one of my favorite examples to use. This dude literally, I think it was going into like his game that pretty much would have recruited him to go pro, or it was actually his first pro football game. I don't remember exactly that part of it, but like, I mean, everybody was like huge fan. Like he was like, this was what God put me, or put me here to do. I'm going to be able to take care of all of my family because of the money I'm going to be able to make because of me being a professional football player. Very first game, he gets tackled, literally goes paralyzed on the field.
Right.
And like, they had to, I don't know if they amputated his arm or if this is terrible that I don't remember this whole story, but just the concept of where it's like his entire life shifted. He wanted to end his life because the identity he had in his career of providing for his family and this empire that he could create and change the trajectory of not only his, but other people's lives. Like that's a big heroic thing and intention to be ambitious towards. But life happens. Right. And then like now you're able to like redefine, like, what am I going to do with what I have now? Like, I think, it's important. I actually did an episode on this too, about how like life is just like driving your car. You can't constantly stare past your headlights because you're going to hit whatever is directly in front of your headlights. If you don't look past your headlights, you're not going to probably see the curve that's coming up. And if you're constantly looking in your rear view mirror, you're going to crash because you're not looking in front of you.
Right.
But when you're driving your car, what do? You constantly are checking all three different angles. So I think that especially when we're navigating life, it's important to zoom out and be super ambitious for a big, big goal and focus in on this is my plan of attack to get there. But you also have to give yourself a little wiggle room that if it doesn't quite go that way, what's next?
Right.
This doesn't mean this is over. This is just meaning I'm embarking a new endeavor on being able to get to the sole mission of what it is that I feel I'm called to do. Final point I'll make on that, and then I'll let you share how you would approach this. Never in a million. I've done so many different careers. It's insane, especially for how young I am. But one of them in particular was life insurance. I can promise you, I was doing hair and massage therapy and network marketing.
All true, guys.
And I did hair on dead people. I was a Zumba instructor, nothing related to insurance. And all of a sudden I end up there. But you know what? I experienced a whole lot of death in my life. And so for me, I was able to serve in that season of my life when I was doing that because I had such perspective and purpose on how I could help people in that avenue. It didn't mean it was meant to be for the rest of my life, but the purpose was for me to be able to impact lives, to serve others.
Yeah.
Clearly, that's not how I'm doing that anymore. That doesn't mean I'm any more or less than of a success or failure because it's in a different avenue now. But that also doesn't mean that as I'm in that season of what I'm doing, that I'm just like, nah, maybe I should just sit and manifest what direction I should go. No, like take what it is that you're doing and use it.
Yeah.
So be ambitious to give it all you got and what you have there, but be open for if a speed bump comes your way on how you can now be ambitious to consider a different route.
Yeah. I think that's so important is planning for stuff to happen. Things that you don't want to happen, right? Like we love the pleasant surprises, right? But when things don't go our way and for you to change your mind. I think that's another thing too is that I can empathize with this client because I didn't give myself a plan B. Like the notion of plan B was threatening to the existence of plan A.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing too is allow yourself the space to have options, and to be open to options because you never know where life's going to take you. All of this, and that's what you said to me in that moment too, is that all of it had a place, all of it, right? And with this client, of course, I went through something similar, so I was able to just slow down and empathize with her. But I think a powerful question that most people don't really know the rooted answer to is why now? Everyone's going to initially say, well, because like I've had enough, right? I've had enough of it. Yeah, that's a reason. That's a valid reason. And also you felt like this for a long, long time. I don't think the clients that you work with, they just like woke up like yesterday and said, oh, this sucks. I'm going to go find Coach Jamie. They've been dealing with this to some extent, whether they realize it or not. So why now? Why now? And it's incredible, like the courage that it takes someone to reach out to a coach. I know like when I was looking for a therapist back in grad school and even like recently too, it's so hard to find someone, like email, the logistical part, let alone like the actual like act of doing it, like emotionally being ready. So I commend people to do that. But I think, why now? I think that like talking about like writing this new chapter based on, without like discrediting and disregarding your previous chapters as well. Because there was a moment where I also, and I see this in clients too, they were like, I want to write a new chapter and I'm like ashamed of my past. And it's like, you need that past. You need it because it's who you are. It's your story. That was long-winded, sorry.
No, that was so perfect, because now like you took me to another area that I definitely wasn't planning on going with this, but I want to even challenge that, right? Because what I see in a lot of other coaches and everything is that, especially if they specialize in being a burnout coach or a career transition coach or whatever, there's one thing that you also mentioned about, it was the trait in how you were, not just necessarily a trait, it was a perspective on how you saw or your client or your case study. And, you know, because since you've referenced both of those, how you saw the situation, right? Of plan A is my only option. If I don't do this, I'm a failure. So how you were pouring energy into that was coming from a space of fear. So I love that you mentioned that question, why now? Because maybe in working with a coach or a therapist and digging in deeper, it's that if I can remove this excess stress of feeling that this is defining me on who I am and what I'm here to do, if I can now feel more confident in who I am and know that there's other options, maybe that takes a lot of pressure off and I can go back to enjoying what it is that I did or I am doing, you know? And I think, again, as a coach, because a lot of people misconstrue, you know, therapist for coach, you know, my job as a coach is not to tell you what to do and how to live your life. I want to challenge your perspective so you can find out, like, for yourself, what makes the most sense for you and help give you resources on how you could go about either. But I think, again, slowing down enough to like, what am I doing this all for? If it's because my plan A can only be plan A because my ambition, my success is so engulfed into this being my end game for a career, that's when that ambition can kill you. But when you start to take a step back from it and know that this isn't all that I do, this is just a place that I can really shine. And I know that I can serve in the capacity of other areas too. And when that pressure comes off, you could still be ambitious towards that, but recognize that you have enough energy to be ambitious in other endeavors as well.
And these things that you want, does it fall in the happiness category or fulfillment? Because we
Yeah.
know happiness comes in spurts and bursts, right? They're like shot glasses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And fulfillment is that long, steady tempo.
Yeah.
At least that's what we hope for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that tempo can change. It can change. Like, you can, what fulfills you today may not fulfill you next year.
Yeah.
Who knows, right? And as you said, like, when you approach it, like when you only have, like, it's all or nothing thinking. And we know how that goes, black and white, right? Because life is a blob of gray.
Yeah.
I actually personally hate that essence, but that's the truth. That's the truth. Like, you don't have to like the truth, but it that's why these conversations, we go there. We talk about these things. And again, if this episode is making you uncomfortable, that's not a bad sign.
Right.
That means there's something that is rattling up inside of you that you've been putting away or down. But ambition and the tempo. And so what do we tell this 32-year-old client that is figuring out her new pace of life in the ambition realm? Well, how I started with her too is I talked about, okay, we talked a lot about the professional accolades. What else is there in your life? Well, no, all I am is work, and I don't know what I am outside of my professional identity. Okay, well, do you eat? Your eating patterns at least is 1% of your life. So we look at your life as a whole. You're not just one thing, because you cannot just be one thing. You just can't. And so looking at what are other things that bring you fulfillment as well can also ease that burden of, like, because if it's everything is all your eggs are in one basket, how does that end? And
That's
it's
so
heavy.
Good. That's so good.
It's so heavy. There's so much more to you than your title.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And if there isn't, that you can't think of any, that's telling in itself. That's the work that we got to put in to see, like, what are other areas we can build within your life or bring awareness so you do have more things going on.
Yeah.
Right?
That's so good.
So
That's so good.
What are the action steps we could give this client?
Yeah.
Aside from these wonderful seeds we've planted.
Yeah. So this is a big part of my process that happens all throughout my coaching. And so the action that I'm going to give here is actually the creation of a habit. So this is not something that, even as I say it right here and now, it's going to sound super good, but I guarantee the average person isn't going to do it because they're going to get stuck back into the whirlwind of life. But one thing that I would practice with my client, and the muscle that I would train within my client, if this 32-year-old woman were to come to me, is we're going to learn how to celebrate. And celebrating things that are not professional. I always like to say, big or small, we celebrate them all. And so by training this individual to learn how to see the successes outside of the professional accolades or on paper, what checks the box of the point A and only A route, because then they can start building confidence and recognize that their worth isn't only in their work, because they're experiencing firsthand the wins in other areas of their life. So mine would be an ongoing thing, because again, it's easy to fall back into what I call default mode, where they're cool. It's a motivational hype thing. And I spent today being like, I am strong, I am powerful, and I am an awesome friend. And that's why I am more than my job. Doing that one time isn't going to work. And this is, again, where the deep work comes in on why the sustainability of fulfillment would be important, and the sustainability around who that person is becoming is crucial. So it would be a consistent thing that I would do, is help them celebrate their wins.
I had her schedule time in doing something that she actually enjoys for 5 minutes twice a week. That's how little we just started bare minimum, in something that had no contribution to a professional life or any purpose, except it had every purpose in the world behind it.
Absolutely.
Like, you like making your oats in the morning? That is your sacred 5 minutes every morning. That's it.
Yeah.
Right? I think so much of the time, even, and even me, I mean, I'm self-disclosing a lot, but I think as coaches, we lose a lot of relatability to clients sometimes, because they think, oh, well, you've made it, or you've never had that. No, we are like the ultimate strugglers.
Right.
That's why we're in the position we're in. And, even I love to read. And a time where somebody told me to do that, I was picking books that contributed to my field. And no, you need to read a book that's just about leaves, literally, just nothing. And I think that is really healing in itself, because what self-care really does, and that's another buzzword, but taking care of yourself, what it does is it makes you 100% for you to actually do the things that you need to do, with not such great intensity, but you do it with greater quality. That's the intention behind it. The word self-care, that's another episode too.
Y'all are going to have to drop in the comments some topics that you guys would like us to discuss, because I feel like, especially in this, we've eye rolled a lot on some pretty buzz phrases. So comment below, comment wherever you're seeing this, message us, let us know your feedback on this, and if there's anything in particular, because we would be happy to keep doing this if you guys find value in this. Yeah.
And default mode is such an obvious thing that people go back to. I'm guilty of it sometimes too, but I think one thing that helps with default mode is talking to people that obviously you trust, about this type of content, because they hold you accountable to it. And you talk about things, you bounce ideas off of one another, right? So share with people, share this episode.
Yay. I like the plug. I love it.
Okay.